Rich, thanks for coming over.
You got it, Bobby.
I was watching on, I guess, Instagram, all the things. You were doing the Hall of Fame the last couple nights?
Yes, sir.
You got to be exhausted.
No, I'm invigorated, brother. Like this is.
But do you go to work
is
tomorrow?
great.
Will you do the show tomorrow?
I'm going to do the show tomorrow. Yeah,
See,
flying back to L.A. tonight as soon as I'm done with you. Got a flight.
Did you at least fly private from Canton to here?
No.
No?
Well, yes, private is known as business select.
Yeah.
You know, so but that was Cleveland to here, and so. But you know, I do love going to the Hall of Fame. Is something I've done almost as much as anything else that I've done with NFL Network, and it's the only Hall of Fame where it kicks off a season. Everybody else's Hall of Fame is usually mid-season or total off-season. Like this is the signal that it's back. So it's always neat to celebrate the past as you're about to kick off the present. It's a really neat affair.
You spend any time with Devon Hester?
I did, yeah.
I think I would like him.
You would.
I think
you sure would.
And I think at this point now I can kind of tell somebody's personality.
Yeah.
Social media kind of allows that now. I think I would like Devon Hester. What's that guy like?
I mean, you know, I've known of him for quite some time, working with Deion Sanders, who took him in because Devon didn't have a dad. I believe his dad died when he was 11. So Dion was kind of his father figure. So to see Dion there for the jacket presentation, to be the one to put it on him, was a pretty neat moment for both guys. He's considered a Devon a son for a long time. I was there on the Thursday night football game in Atlanta when he broke Dion's record for returns, with Dion there underneath Dion's banner in Dion's house that he built, the Georgia Dome. And it's pretty amazing that I think the thing that makes him particularly special is that, listen, the thing you love in sports the most is when the expectation level is not just met, but surpassed. And anytime he touched the ball, you expected something special to happen with him. And the number of times that he did it when it was expected of him on the biggest stages like the Super Bowl or a Thursday night game with Dion in the house, the fact that he got an opportunity to return one and then he did it is what makes him a Hall of Famer. And those are the most special moments that in sports where you're like, boy, I hope this guy hits a home run. Boy, I hope he returns one. Boy, I'd love to see, you know, him win a game with a 3-point shot. And the sports gods bestow them with the opportunity and then they cash it in. It really is something else to see. And he's really special in that regard.
How did you and Dion become close?
Well, I mean, we worked together. So, and that was about it. We started working together at NFL Network in the mid-aughts. And, you know, when Dion joins, obviously there's a buzz and there's an excitement level because of what he brings to the table. But there's also, and he'll tell you this, an expectation that he makes it about him because he's primetime and he is somebody that invites the spotlight. He doesn't just bask in it, he invites it. So anybody who's worked with him or was a teammate of his will let you know he's the most collaborative, best teammate that you can have. And that began when the highlights show that we were doing together from jump when he joined NFL Network, NFL Game Day Highlights, which was the highlight show after the late afternoon games were over in advance of Sunday Night Football. And then after Sunday Night Football, it was me, Dion, and Steve Mariucci. And Steve was kind of new to television. And so they put Dion in the middle and Steve at the end of the set. And Dion said, first thing he goes, let's not have Steve on the outside. Let's have him in the middle. Because, you know, if I'm in the middle and I'm talking to Rich, it's, you know, Steve will be forgotten. He's going to be out there on his own. And I was totally blown away by that. He was awesome. He was always thinking about other people. I had a 40th birthday party. He surprised me by flying in from Texas just for it. He's the best, man. And he was giving out the first Thursday night season. He was always telling Mooch that his shoes stunk, so he was going to get Gucci's for his Moochie, and he got him Gucci shoes, and then he asked everybody for their sizes, didn't want to leave anybody out. So we all got Gucci slip, we all got these awesome Gucci slip-on shoes. I could tell Dion stories for days.
I think it was about 2017, ABC called, and I'd done a little work with them. This is pre-Idol, before I was on Idol for a bunch of years, and Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
And they kind of just flirted with putting me on because I wasn't like coastal guy. You know, I didn't live in LA, didn't live in New York. And they were like, hey, come out and test for this daytime talk show. And I was like, oh, cool, sounds great. I've done a lot of tests. And I get there, and you've actually been famous for a long time. I've only ever flirted with like the crust of the water, right? You know, so I'm up, and it's like me, and I'm doing all these panels with like Rudy Huxtable and Juliana Rancic and like the eighth housewife of these shows. And so I make it through that day. And so I really didn't know what I was doing, even going out there, meaning I didn't know it was going to be like, can you survive day one to get to day two? So then I'm in like day two with like slightly more famous people.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like Theo Huxtable. And then it's like this.
You upgraded the fifth housewife?
So I continue to move through, and there are actually like famous people that are testing for the show on the very last day. And it's a little intimidating for me. And everybody's in their cliques in the very Hollywood way. And so I'm just sitting at this cafeteria table by myself. And somebody goes, hey, you can come sit over here. And I looked up, and it was freaking Deion Sanders, who I'd never met. He didn't know me, but he just saw me sitting by myself. Now, I'm an adult man at this point, too. It's not like I'm a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But it was that Forrest Gump moment where, can't see here, seats taken, where it really felt like that. And so he invited me over, and I talked with him for a while. And then we worked together because it was him and I that ABC picked to do the show. We worked together every day for 4 months. And I tell people, like, he was like the greatest I'll look out for you dude that I've ever worked with.
Yeah, right.
When he was coaching his kids in high school at the time, Shador, he was the high school coach down in Texas, and he'd fly back and forth, and Tracy would come
for his truth. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so we did the show for ABC. They changed their kind of executive hierarchy, and the show went to pilot, and then it did not get picked up. And so we went from working together every day for 4 months to not at all. But I kid you not, he would just reach out randomly, and I would be amazed that somebody so world-renowned, excellent at what he does, regardless of what area he was in, would actually think to remember and care.
Yeah.
And so then when he got the job at Jackson State, I reached out, it was super cool, Colorado, and the perception I think that people have of him, and I don't think it's unfair because I think he does it. He knows what he's great at.
He invites it.
Yes.
He invites it.
But I would be like his biggest, and he didn't need an advocate of like, he's the greatest dude ever.
Right.
And when one of my books come out, he took a picture and posted on social media of him reading the book with the cover out. Didn't ask him, and I just remember Dion being so cool. So when he comes on your show, I'm always like, man, that is, it's so cool to see somebody else like yourself who loves Dion.
I do.
Who had that relationship on a personal basis because he was so cool to me when he didn't have to be.
It's just, he's just truly one of the coolest guys you can ever meet. And I'll never forget, we were going to the Pro Bowl practice one year. The first year it was taken out of Hawaii and it was put in South Florida. And so we're driving by a baseball facility in Fort Lauderdale and on the way to the practice. And he goes, I think I've been here before. I got this feeling I've been here before. I'm like, yeah, Dion, that's where you were in spring training with the Yankees. And you forget, okay? You just forget sometimes how much he's lived and how great he's been at living.
Yeah, right? Elite.
Right. And where he is a guy who also hosted Saturday Night Live and had a song, Must Be the Money, and could have been the MVP of a World Series. And so on and so on and so on. Easily the most famous guy I've ever walked through an airport with. Hands down, anybody, so regardless of race, color, creed, socioeconomic status, they all want a piece of him. And I will always sing Dion's praises, always.
About 5 years ago, I redesigned the radio studio to be more visual. We have cameras in the walls.
Yeah.
I mean, I stole the set completely from yours. Before I'd even ever sat in yours,
Okay.
my dream was to always be, and it's shifted a bit with how technology has been, but I always wanted to do a late night talk show because Letterman was my hero.
Me too.
Yeah, he was irreverent, he was goofy. I felt like if that guy can do it, I have a chance.
Sure.
And so when I flipped the radio show into a multimedia show for all intents and purposes,
Sure.
I would watch you on social media, and I was just like, I mean, that's the set that I'd like to have. So I'd like to say that publicly.
Thank you.
I stole that from you.
I'm honored that you would say that or think it. I'm the same way. You know, Letterman is my guy. I mean, like the comedic axiom of make a joke, repeat it, then beat it to death. That's David Letterman, and I love that.
Did you ever meet him?
I was on his show once. So that's the only time I've met him. And trust me, I really wanted to get on his show. I mean, of all shows, that's the one. And the number of times that I attempted, and had people, reach out was voluminous. And the one year he accepted was 2011, because he was curious because it was during the lockout of the NFL season of 2011. He was curious how I would host a draft during a lockout. He was fascinated by that. And so that's how I got on. And in my green room, there's the cue cards from it. I got the cue cards from his introduction of me. So that's truly one of my favorite pop culture items that's hung in the green room of my shop. And he's the best. He's the absolute best at it. And so I always wanted to be, either a stand-up comic or a late night talk show host.
Did you ever try comedy?
And I did try comedy. I tried comedy in stand-up. I did stand-up in college. And so, I did stand-up in college, and that was the toughest thing I've ever had to do is stand up in college. And I loved it to this point where if I don't get immediate feedback from those on the set, I think a joke is flopped. And I'm like even that moment, I'm looking around to see who's laughing. I'm trained for that. And I always will tell anybody on a set that I'm on, go ahead and laugh. I don't care if I hear it. You're not ruining anything. You don't have to, it's not a library. There should be some energy. Toughest thing I've ever had to do. Loved it. Just didn't think I would be cut out for that life. So getting an opportunity to be a sportscaster on SportsCenter, I kind of had that stand-up mentality. And then being able to do the show that I'm doing right now, turning 10 years old in October, it's a blessing that I get to bring sort of a talk show feel to sports talk, hybrid it up with wrap it around pop culture. Every single day, 3 hours is a long time, but that just means I have an opportunity to have more guests.
Yeah, I feel like there's a slightly different version of you in a timeline that's 25 years into a talk show, because you have all the sensibilities of any of the greats.
Thanks.
That have done it, meaning you're quick, you're funny, and I say this in the way, because I would get research back from these networks, and they would go, this is on me. So they would go, you've tested the women, like you're just good looking enough to where they like you, and you're not so good looking that the guys don't like you.
Yes.
I'd be right in that space.
Yes.
Where it didn't feel good when they would say it,
Yeah.
but they would hire me for these shows because I was like,
You're not threatening.
to anybody.
You're just threatening enough, but
yeah.
not threatening.
And
I don't know how I would test. My testing on that front. Certainly, when I was mostly single, when I was on my SportsCenter days, and I'd go to a bar, and suddenly a drink would be placed in front of me that I didn't order, and the bartender would say, "This has been, is a drink been bought for you?" And I would look up, and there would be like 3 hot chicks and just the one fat guy in between them, just raising his glass at me like, "You the man."
But see,
That was my life,
my point.
Bobby,
that is my point.
That was my life.
That anecdote right there is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Meaning, you're super funny, but I think some of your funny can be lost because you have to talk for so long. I feel the same way about myself. I've got to do 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And when you have to talk that long about things, the really funny things can get lost because you're having to paint broad strokes.
Dude, you are not wrong, Bobby. And that's why the advent of and the currency that figuratively, not literally, because these don't really make a lot of money actually revenue-wise to go deep in the business of it. But the reels on Instagram, the TikTok world, the shorts on YouTube, that you can now pull those moments out of a 4-hour conversation and spotlight it in 90 seconds. And that is the way people consume your world as a mainstream way of consuming. Back when, we were kids, it'd be just like, what do you mean you can just boil down a 3-hour show and to 90 fun seconds and people will watch that, and how will they watch it, and how is that even remotely showing off the breadth of your work? Now that's the way it works. The reels, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube shorts, Facebook shorts, that's the way a lot of people consume things. And in the past, it'd be like, yeah, but I have so much to say in the other, 2 hours, 58 minutes, and I'm bad at math, in 30 seconds. Like, what about the other ones? But now you can pull those moments out and say, hey, if you want to consume all 3 hours live, you can do that. If you want to consume all 3 hours on demand, watching it and also listening to it, you've got that. But now there's a way to take the best 90 seconds to, 120 seconds and serve it up to you. And I get so many people saying, man, love your show on TikTok. And I don't distribute it live on TikTok, but I'll take it. Certainly as somebody who wouldn't be associated with being viewable on TikTok. But that's the way it is now.
It does feel weird, but then there are shows that I only consume through TikTok. Like there are podcasts that I really only watch on TikTok, and I don't even follow them. My algorithm feeds them to me, but now I expect my algorithm to feed them to me.
Yes.
And if you ask me, do you listen? Theo Vaughn is an example. Do you listen to Theo Vaughn? I know a lot about what he's doing because I see all his clips on TikTok.
Right.
And so it is a different world where I think, back to my point of, I think you're at times wildly funny, but it's hard to find those nuggets if you're listening to a large sample because you've got to land all the planes. You've got guests you've got to interview, but these smaller clip versions allow a different part that we want to be highlighted to actually be highlighted.
Yeah, and I have no problem with it. It's really a game changer. Whereas there would be a funny moment in a 5-minute clip that we'd put out there, it's just not consumable for a lot of demographics, a lot of age groups, and now you just boil it down to 90 seconds, 2 minutes. It's a difference maker. Certainly when you got a talk show, because there are great moments, and then there's also, boy, that was great how you can get in depth. You got this answer, you got that answer. Well, there's a podcast for that. There's a 20-minute version of that, and there's a YouTube version of that. That's the 21st century we're in, and I'm trying to figure it out while exploiting it at the same time.
Can you go out and not be recognized now in LA?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
You've been famous for so long.
I have been, but I'm still an acquired taste, Bobby. But it's fine. I'm not complaining about anything. There, the perfect example is just. It was just yesterday at the Hall of Fame. Some dude stops me and says, "Rich Eisen, can we take a picture?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Love you, man. This, that, the other thing." And he turns around as I'm leaving, and his wife says, "Who's that?"
Does it ever happen?
She goes, "Who's that?" Like out loud.
Yeah.
And I laughed. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna laugh and not turn around and say, "What do you like?" It's just there's different walks of life, and just trying to cross over as much as I possibly can and get my material out there. But it kind of just was funny because she knew when she said that I could hear that, and I almost turned around and told her, like, I can hear you ask who I am, clearly enough for your husband to stop the conversation with you on the spot, to stop me, take a photograph, fanboy, and have me walk away, but not out of or next time you don't know who your husband's stopping to take a selfie with, can you wait
till you're out of
that
earshot,
person's
yeah.
out of earshot before asking who that person is? But hey, it's all good. It's kind of you to, ask that question, and it's all good, man. I don't mind stopping, talking to people, it doesn't faze me at all. It's great.
The weird one for me is if someone comes up and they say, hey, and I feel like people at times aren't knowing what they're saying. They're just trying to fill silence.
Can I guess what it is?
I'm sure you can, yeah.
Okay. Where are you from? Where do I know you?
That happens a lot too.
Like it's now what am I, Google?
Yes, what do I
am
know
I your
you from?
personal Google?
Yeah.
Am I like your AI assistant here?
That's not even the most cutting though. If that happens, that's a nice one.
Okay.
The one that cuts me the most, they'll come up and go, hey, do you mind if I get a picture? And I'm like, no, not at all. They go, I don't even know who you are. My uncle's a huge fan, or my aunt's. And I think to myself, you don't have to say you don't know who I am. You can just say, can I take a picture? And then disperse with the picture however you'd like. But they'll come up and go, hey, do you mind if I get a picture? I'm like, of course not. Why would I care? And to be honest, I don't know who you are, but my aunt will love this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't feel like there was a need to say you didn't know who I was.
Yeah, I have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
Right. My favorite moment was, this happened with Stuart once, Stuart Scott, where somebody came up, and these were the old days where there were no camera phones, okay, like the actual phone, the actual real camera. I'm standing there with him. He says, somebody went up to Stuart and said, would you mind taking a picture? He goes, absolutely not.
Oh, yeah.
And they handed him the camera to take a picture of me with that person. And it was like Stuart thought I had put this person up to that, but it was not at all. And it was awesome. To the point where I would then in future times ask people to do that to Stuart, and then he would ask people to do that to me. Like, so anytime, which is a problem because now we're being skeptical of people asking, would you mind if you took a picture?
You've planted the seed of doubt at all times.
Oh, but it was great. He handed the camera to Stuart, and Stuart's like, oh, okay. Took the picture. Oh, my God. That was awesome.
Was at the All-Star game this year. Another one is someone had recognized me from something, and I was like, take a picture? Sure, love. Let's take the picture. Someone else came up and goes, hey, can I get one? Yeah, sure. Take one. Who are you again? I just saw them taking a picture with you.
I'll get that.
And again.
Sure. Yeah. I'm like, here, I should have, you know what? You and I should have folded up in our wallets if you still have
You're
one.
way more famous than I am. It's just not the same.
We should have like our resumes folded up. Like, here you go.
I just put a code.
Just unfold it and say, this is my resume. This is who I am.
One of those menus
from
headshot. With COVID, you put you do the menu on your phone. I just keep that on my pants, my back pocket.
We should have a QR code. Have them shoot the QR code to find out who we are.
Here it is. I got a blue check mark and everything.
I like it. Here's my QR code. Use my code name of Rich. You'll get $20 off your first purchase, whatever it is.
When you're famous and living in Connecticut, because that era for me was. Just in music and sports in general, that era for me was when I probably grew the most as a human being. So all of you guys were wildly famous to me because I watched every day, every night, SportsCenter, ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
But I have friends now that were super famous in the 90s and early 2000s in music, and they would be touring all the time, and they would not know how famous they were because there wasn't social media. And so they would just be traveling until it was over, or they could settle, or they would be in LA or New York. They really wouldn't know. Right. Was it like that then?
Hell yeah. Let me tell you something, Bobby. So I did the mostly for my 7-year SportsCenter career, I did mostly the 2 a.m. Eastern Time SportsCenter that would be 11 o'clock Pacific and would be re-aired for hours the next morning, throughout the next morning. Like, that would never happen now, right? Like, they would never air a show that's dated by hours. Like, they'll be live. That's the way it works now. But back in that day, and then they moved up the time slot from 2 a.m. to 1 a.m. But the problem with that is that the number of West Coast events that weren't over by that time, we had to basically redo the show a second time at 2 a.m. Eastern to update. And if they weren't somehow over by the end of that show, we'd have to stay later until the game ended to put it into the show of record that would get re-aired throughout the next day. So I'm living in central Connecticut and coming to work at like 5 o'clock at night, doing a show that aired at 1 a.m. and then 2 a.m. and then getting home at 4 a.m. and then trying to get off the high of being on live TV in time to go to sleep. And then I would sleep throughout the most exposure I've had on cable television in my entire career. From 5 a.m. it would start Eastern time all the way to 1 in the afternoon. I still get people today, and obviously it blows me away when people come up to me with their kids next to them, saying that they used to watch me and Stuart Scott mostly before they got on the school bus in the morning, because I was on at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., or 6 a.m. nonstop. So I would be sleeping when I got the most exposure of my career. And then I would wake up, I'd have lunch. I don't know what the hell I was doing with my life then, and then going to work and doing it again. And I would have no idea who was watching it. Zero. It was as if I was living on planet Bristol. No clue. And then I would go to New York City and try and have a social life, whenever I had a day off. It was also tough in that regard too. I'd meet, somebody and immediately say to them, hey, you want to have dinner sometime in like 2 Tuesdays? Try that, come online for size. Like, hey, what are you doing 2 Tuesdays from now? What a weirdo, right? But that's when my next day off was.
That for me.
And so like that was my life in terms of not knowing who's listening, not knowing who's out there, unable to get myself in some sort of social mix, get some sort of thing going that I could have a social life outside of work. I'm not complaining, but that was you asked me what my life was like.
Yeah, when could you tell, though, for the first time that it had kind of blown up?
I don't know. It really wasn't a moment.
It wasn't like TRL.
It might have been like at an ESPYs, an ESPY Awards when they put Stuart and I up. We replaced Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann as the guys who did the pre-ESPY Awards show from the balcony of Radio City Music Hall. Dan and Keith always said that they were like the old man Muppets, Stadler and Waldorf, sitting up there in the balcony. And then Stuart and I did it for a couple years, and then getting out and about, and then, meeting some celebrities who knew who we were. Like that was kind of blowing me away. I just assumed. I had no idea who was watching at all. And now here I am, in 2024, running into people who now have children, saying that when they were kids, I would be the ones to either put them to sleep if they were, in teenage years on the West Coast, or kids going to school, waking them up. Like that was my life.
In sports, what became more romantic to you as you got more involved, and what became less? Meaning, I still love the Cubs, but we worked out with the Cardinals, and I didn't hate the Cardinals, where me before I got, or music, right? Like I can also see kind of the gross things about music, but I can also see now when somebody's really good, like it's even that much cooler to me. Like what wasn't as cool about sports, and what became even cooler?
I'll be honest with you, Bobby. I'm just not jaded. I'm the fact that, again, like you were there working with my guys at the show, right? You worked with the team there. Sometimes we're sitting there an hour before a show just talking about any old stupid shit, and like talking about this movie, that thing, this thing. And then we're like, you know what, let's do a segment about that movie or this thing or in relation to whatever. And then, a couple times I'll just sit around and I'll say to everybody, like, can you believe this is what we do? Honestly, like I'm not jaded about it. There's things about the sports business that, will make you sick or to your stomach, or this about somebody or know that about somebody. But that's just anything with any business. But truly, it's the toy department of life, being able to talk sports. And I just, I hope that's the way it will always be.
Do you ever want to not fly too close to the sun with your favorite teams?
Meaning what? What do you mean?
My example now is I have purposefully not pursued a relationship with John Calipari at Arkansas. I am diehard Razorback fan in every way. I'm afraid if I don't like somebody, it's going to affect how hard I root for that team.
Yeah.
So everyone says, by all accounts, he's awesome. I don't want to not like any a part of that, because then it takes away like what I love to do most, which is root for Arkansas sports.
Well, let's put it this way, Bobby. You should reach out.
No.
You'll be good.
But
He'll
I'm
be
asking,
good. He's going to be fine.
but with like
with
the
you.
Jets and like Rex Ryan,
Well,
like
with
any
that,
of them.
Listen, you know, in terms of flying too close, like this particular year with the Jets is I'm backing off for sure. Because at this point in time, I'm slated to call a Week 5 game with them in London, and that's the last thing I want to do is that anybody think that I'm being biased against the Vikings who they're playing against at all. But if anybody who knows me for real, and I'm not shitting you here at all, if they know me for real, that if I'm calling a game, I would not care who wins at all. I just want it to be a close game.
But if you don't like
really
a coach, and I'm not saying any of the coaches, but over your history of being a Jets fan,
Yes.
if you really don't like a coach,
of course it'll ruin the rooting interest. So yeah, I guess if you keep your distance, that makes complete sense that you don't want it ruined, you know, in that regard. But after a while, also, you know, listen, truly the only teams that affect my emotional output, and this is for real, where I will just say, why am I happier today? Oh, that's right, they won. Or why am I less happy today? Oh, they lost, and I should be a better human being, you know, to myself and everyone around me, are the Michigan Wolverine football team and the New York Yankees. That's it. That's the list. If the Jets lose, you know, it'll be like, well, that's a bummer. But, you know, okay. But those are truly the only two teams that affect my emotions.
Did you ever meet Conor Stallions?
I did not. I did not meet.
Would you like to?
No, but man, he gave me some great seats once.
Have you?
I don't want to meet him. Why would I want to meet him?
I would want to meet him if he was.
Why?
If he was doing. He had a manifesto where nobody got hurt or died or anything.
I understand that, but
he rooted for who you rooted for.
But he was so.
He'd be my hero.
He was so piss poor at it that, you know,
That's true.
You know, if I met him, I'd say, "Why were you that sloppy, man?"
I don't know.
And just let me just say this to you, okay? You're referring to the guy who gave out tickets to people so they could sit in geographically advantageous spots to record the opposition sidelines of teams that Michigan was going to play.
That is correct.
Against the rules of NCAA scouting. I'll just repeat again. I'm sorry if
he would be my hero, though. If I were you, I would love the guy because I'm sure he did it right for a long time.
No, because I don't think he did it right. You know what I mean? Let me ask you this question: how many times have you been on vacation with your lovely wife or anybody else, and you hand somebody a phone saying, "Would you mind taking a picture?" Have you done that before?
Yeah.
Okay. How many times do you get the phone back and the photograph is more of the sky than of you?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay.
95%.
So Conor Stallions is giving tickets to a bunch of people to say, shoot video for me. How often do you think the video came back flat out unusable? Like
most of the time.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying is like everybody thinks that this thing was run to perfection. Okay, the seats were perfect.
I don't think that.
And the videos were perfect.
I'm not even talking about the allegations. I'm talking about he loved him like you did.
Oh,
he gave his whole. He wrote it.
But I would never cheat on behalf of my team.
I'm not even talking about you're awfully sensitive. I'm just talking about
you bet I'm
generally.
sensitive.
Like, this guy was awesome. If there was anybody that would put his heart and soul into Arkansas like that, I low-key would be like, keep your head up, buddy.
No, man.
Let's go.
I would choose a different adjective for him than awesome. I would say
maybe publicly.
Privately. I'll tell it to you privately.
But you never met him? See, I would love him. That would be my dude.
Absolutely not. I want no piece
I would
of him.
I would do that.
I would like him to leave the scene and never to return.
What about the documentary coming out?
I don't want to see it.
Man, I think I like him more than you do.
Yeah, I know. Go tell him I said to off. Is that wrong to say? I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not
okay.
at all. Were you and Harbaugh close? Cool?
I love him. He's my first quarterback. When I was a freshman, he was a senior. So he was my first Michigan quarterback ever. He was just part of my latest charity run for St. Jude, which you know about that charity very well. And so he's just I love him. And everybody's like wondering, you know, are you upset that he left Michigan to go to the Chargers? And my answer to that, and I'll repeat it here again, is there's a man-made lake outside of SoFi Stadium. I think he walked on it to sign his contract. I do not care. He hung the banner. He left. He gave me one of the greatest years of my life, not just sports. It was my life. And so good luck to him.
We're going to see him Wednesday. We're going to go out.
Are you really?
Yeah, the Chargers invited us to come out.
How cool is that?
Yes.
So you're going to be
We're
You gonna be there?
flying in Wednesday afternoon with them. Then I have to go speak on Thursday in San Diego. But they were like, "Come out." So we're gonna go. I never met them.
When do you land? Because my show studio is 2 minutes away from their facility. Literally a left and a right.
Oh, I've been to your show studio,
Yeah,
but I didn't know where the facility was.
They just opened it a month ago. So
that's true.
If you've got time, come back.
You'll be.
I don't know.
I would like to see the guy. My wife was like, "Oh, you're going to see Rich again?"
Yeah.
Today.
Okay.
And I was like, No. When you were coming to the house, she was like, "Oh, how long has it been since you've seen Rich?" And I was like, "Never."
Yeah, we've never met.
She goes, "Wait, what?" I said, "I've spoken to him on the phone."
Yes.
Because you called me very graciously before I went and
I appreciate
covered
it.
for you.
Yeah.
And then we've spoken on Zoom.
Yeah.
But any time that I would be there or when I did your show, you weren't there.
I know. That's the
point.
That's the point of.
And I was like, I've never met him. She's like, really?
Of sitting in, that I have to be out for you to sit in. Yes.
But I love you. Your guys were so freaking
They
warm
loved
and
you
cool
too,
to
man.
me. And we have a text thread where we just talk about you the whole time. It's just me and all the guys.
I don't know if I want to see that.
Yeah. But they were super nice. Like,
oh, cool.
And accommodating and warm. Your studio's massive.
It's fun. It's like
what's the rent on that place?
It's filled with stuff in there that is under the category from my wife of, you know where that would look better?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, where? Like your studio? Oh, got it. I just walked through your finely, beautifully appointed house to come here. And I thought the question I always ask a bunch of guys is, how much of the stuff in the house is what you brought to the relationship?
Yeah, none.
Zero?
Yeah.
Well, I saw some guitars on the wall.
So those were, and for a while they weren't making the cut. But it's a little sliver where there's like what's that game called where you slide it?
Sure. With the sawdust on it?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Whatever that is. We have one of those tables.
Yeah, I saw that.
And
that's your contribution?
It is not, but what she has done, which makes it cool, is I haven't collected guitars in a long time, but I used to. But now I have some old ones from artists like Kenny Rogers or who have like signed guitars. Garth Brooks gave me like his guitar he played one night or one day.
Yeah.
But now what my wife has done, she's like, well, you have all these guitars. We don't want to pay for a storage unit. So now we put empty ones up, and some of our friends will come to the house and we'll have an evening, and she'll have them sign guitars and hang them up.
See.
I know, like she elevates it.
Well, what she does is she takes your stuff and turns it from this is what a great stylist would do, is to take your shit and turn it from shit into a piece.
Polished a turd.
You know what I'm
which
saying?
my grandma said could not be done.
Yeah, it's now a piece.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? Like that's now a piece on the wall. It's not your shit on the wall. It's a piece that's on the wall. So kudos to you and your stylish wife.
Yeah, to her.
And your relationship. I have in my house, I have an office, so there's stuff that's in there. And there's stuff that once I put it in the office, it's like, why isn't that on your set? I'll get that question, which is a hint.
To take it to yourself.
Again, I've been happily married for 21 years now. And then there is one chair in my house that I brought to the relationship. One. But I bought it with her mom years ago. So it's kind of got like an asterisk on it.
It's a hybrid.
But it's my chair. It's what it used to be in my apartment, and it's still there.
How does the relationship work with both of you being in mostly the same industry?
It's great. I mean, we have a production company together. She is the most collaborative and idea-filled confidant, and she also fills in. So she got her own best mom ever signed, because I have my best dad ever signed on my desk, and she just brings a totally different part of the equation. I kind of dig that when I'm not in the chair, she is, and there's still a family sense there. And then sometimes she'll give opinions that I'm not terribly into, but she understands that she doesn't bat 1,000. I shouldn't say that stuff. Can we cut this part out? No, I'm just kidding.
A couple weeks ago,
sure.
her and her partner on What the Football.
Yeah, Amy Trask.
I listen to your show almost every day.
Thanks, pal.
So
I appreciate that.
That's a great show.
Thanks.
So is that under your network?
It is under a podcast network. They're having year 2 come out starting in September. And Amy Trask is a legend. I mean, she has Hall of Fame credentials from her time with the Raiders. Figuratively and quite literally, I think she should be in the Hall of Fame. And she and Susie, when we've been out to dinner with husbands and friends, and hit it off. And I think we're going to actually legitimately add red wine to the equation this fall, because the two of them are better when they've got a glass in their hand, and just chop it up. And that's the idea, is to have content that is of interest and that you can't get anywhere else. Obviously, that's the way to go. But Susie's filled with ideas and filled with energy and filled with just her own sensibility. Like, she did a power ranking the other day of her power rankings of pet peeves, 3 of which I could identify, emanating from my behavior.
Heavily influenced by home?
Heavily influenced, yeah. Especially the leaving clothes in front of the hamper, not in them. Like, that one really hit home. But I kind of dig putting that out there, Like, that's life. That's relatable. That's what people do. And healthy relationships can survive,
What is your power ranking of favorite musical artists of all time to you?
Oh, gosh.
Give me 5. Go 1 through 5. It'd be hard to do it backward.
Okay. 1. It's a toss-up. 1 is a toss-up between, because I listened to these guys since I was a kid. Billy Joel and Elton John would be 1 and 2, depends on a day. Coldplay 3. You got to put the Beatles on that list. I know I'm dating myself, but I am who I am, Bobby Bones. 5. I love the Killers. And obviously Michigan adopting Mr. Brightside is another aspect of that. John Mayer, John Legend could make this list. So, yeah, that's my power rankings.
Last good concert you've been to?
I was at Bruce Springsteen. Again, being from Staten Island, I guess I should have put Bruce on the list, but my wife's a bigger Bruce fan than I am. Her brother is just a Bruce nut. So there was that in the Forum. Coldplay at the Rose Bowl.
I like emo Coldplay way more than anthemic Coldplay. I love Coldplay.
Sure.
I like the sad, slow stuff more than the getting all the synth.
I got it.
Yeah.
I understand it. But in terms of just a big stadium band, I mean, Chris Martin just attaches himself to your heartbeat. It's I've never seen anything like it. I did see U2 in the Sphere. Holy shit.
What's the Sphere like?
Oh, I've never.
I mean, I've seen clips, obviously, in reels.
It truly is one of those things that you cannot believe until you see it. I mean, when you walk into the Sphere and for the first time, and I saw on the wall these cinder blocks, these large, huge cinder blocks, and I thought to myself, with these 2 dots in each one of these monster sort of cinder blocks, one on top of the other, all the way up to the ceiling, to the roof. And at one point in the roof, you would see these helicopters flying overhead, and it gave you an idea, okay, certainly the hole in the Sphere, there's no hole in the Sphere, and that's not seeing through, that is part of the visual illusion. And I thought that the cinder blocks are made of something that you can cast these visuals on, until the concert started and the cinder blocks separated and bright light was shining through it. And I realized that the light was an image, and so are the cinder blocks this entire time I was sitting there in the hour before the concert. And my mind was blown. And not only can they put anything on there, they can also change the depth perception. At one point, it felt like the ceiling was collapsing on you. And all I kept thinking to myself whenever I watch anybody with Dead and Company, that if the drugs are bad, you are going to have a long-ass night, man. Like, that is really a wild place to see. You could see anything in there. They had the NHL draft in there recently. That looked amazing. I can't, and this is how great the Sphere is, and that I would recommend anybody go to it, even though it's owned by the owner of the Knicks, James Dolan, who I otherwise have nothing but the greatest of contempt for. And I would say fill his pocket with your money.
Do you wish you would
That's how good the sphere is.
You wish you would sell the team?
Oh my God!
Have you wished that forever?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the last couple of years things have turned, so I'll accept the current results.
Like, do you give him Jalen Brunson credit?
No, I give him credit for hiring the guy who got Jalen Brunson. Listen, when he threw Charles Oakley Charles Oakley got thrown in jail and left overnight, that tore it for me.
Do you think Bill Parcells should be in the Hall of Fame?
He is in the Hall of Fame.
Do you think he should be in the Hall of Fame?
I do think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know he's in, but do you think he should be?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what about Robert Kraft?
Yes, absolutely.
I asked that because of the controversies.
Sure.
The documentary that just came out.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, as much as you might feel about Deflategate and Spygate, personally, I think Spygate's worse than Deflategate. Don't forget about with Deflategate that the ball that was confiscated and sent to the NFL and that sparked the controversy was an intercepted football. So if it was supposed to help, why would Brady throw an interception with it? So what I'm saying is, like, it's not cookie cutter where one size fits all right? So there's that. But you still, despite the Spygate and despite the Deflategate, you cannot deny the greatness of what they did for all those years and think that was what made Belichick and Brady and the rest of that roster as great as possible and the organization as sterling as it's been otherwise. So, I mean, Robert Kraft is at the head of that. So,
for the record,
yes.
I agree.
And plus, he was also very instrumental in the advent of NFL Network, as well as bridging the gap in the lockout. So I think he deserves credit for that too.
Eli Manning?
I think he's in the Hall of Fame. He should be. That's next year.
He can now be. Yeah, he's now one of the guys.
He's first time eligible next year, and I think he should go.
What about a guy like Jared Allen?
He's up there for sure in terms of sacks and in terms of what he did when he was there. And I think if you put folks like Patrick Willis in, and you put folks who had a terrific run in a career that wasn't ring heavy and wasn't, for the exception of 3 years for Patrick Willis, 8 years wasn't all that great. That it's just that unfortunately it's only 7 guys can get in a year, and there's 53 guys on a roster. There will always be guys waiting. Always be guys waiting.
I made a list of the people because Eli was one, but Jared Allen's always been one to me that I thought, man, he's such right on that line.
I think so too.
And if it hadn't been for the Vikings actually being the Vikings, if he'd have been on a different team, possibly, he'd be easier. So here are some of the guys that are up next year.
Yeah.
Luke Kuechly.
Yes.
He was so freaking good.
If
he wasn't a Carol. Yeah. He was so good.
He will be. I don't know if he's the first ballot, but he will be.
Earl Thomas.
I don't know about that. I don't know if Earl's going to make it.
Marshawn?
I think so, but running back's a real tough one because Frank Gore's going to be up soon too, and so, Do
you think it helps Marshawn, his personality, since he's out of the league? Can that affect?
Oh, sure, of course it can, because these are human beings that vote, and they're, you might. But Marshawn, again, I think Frank Gore has. I shouldn't speak these things without an internet in front of me, but I think Frank has better statistics, more longevity. But Marshawn has moments that pop out more than Frank Gore.
For sure, Vinatieri, right?
Oh,
like easily.
Without a doubt, he might be a first ballot.
Clay Matthews?
I don't think so.
Staley for sure?
At some point, I think he'll get in. But you also, again, don't forget, you guys got like Torrey Holt should be a Hall of Famer. He's not in. I think Jim Plunkett should be a Hall of Famer. But Jim's from a different category. That there are veterans committees that will put people in. So, again, when you're a receiver, when you're a defensive lineman, running back, quarterback, those are guys that, have the longest line, I think. And tackles, guards, defensive tackles, linebackers usually have to wait the longest. Corners, because if you're not first ballot, you're going to be on that line waiting to jump past any of the so-called skill position players.
3 final things I want to talk about.
Sure.
Dak, what's happening?
Great question. He's got all the cards. He's got all the leverage as of this conversation. He is unsigned past this year. He cannot be franchise tagged, and he cannot be traded. So he's the Dallas Cowboys quarterback this year, and he's going to make a killing. He's going to make an absolute killing depending on whether he gets it from Dallas now or he gets bestowed a free agent contract from somebody that's willing to give him $60 million a year. He's going to get it.
None of those guys have quite hit 60 yet, right? With Jordan Love, Tua, they're
No,
55.
They're currently at 55.
Yeah.
And if Dak goes this year, I think that may be the push-pull. Like, he's probably saying, I want something for starts with a 6. Dallas may be responding, listen, we've got to pay CD, we've got to pay Micah, we need you to take less. And what about that period, that range of money between 55 and 60? Can we find a sweet spot there? I'm guessing that might be the push-pull right now. But if it's not Dak getting 60, it'll be Purdy next year.
Really?
Hell yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence got 55. Tua got 53.1. Jordan Love got 55. Brock Purdy has, if you add up Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua's career playoff wins, Purdy has more. And he probably will even separate himself even more in terms of playoff wins and certainly potentially Super Bowl appearances, if not wins, in that category.
But won't the narrative be what it's always been with Purdy? Well, look at him. He's got Debo. He's got McCaffrey. He's got Brandon Ayuk. And do we really need to pay him $60 million? And I'm not saying that the narrative is correct, but obviously when you're the last person picked.
Yeah, that's the reason why.
Correct.
Don't forget, Brady probably had that for the first couple of years of his career, too. He's on a super team. It was Bill, not Brady.
But Brady won a Super Bowl, though.
He won three out of 4. I understand. We'll see what Purdy does, but I think he's going to get that money.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
If he's the first $60 million guy, a lot
Wouldn't
of people
that be amazing?
I would love it. I think it. The fact that Trey Lance wasn't the guy that came out of that, and Purdy was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, on behalf of guys who look like they're still in high school, I think he would represent people like you very well, Bobby.
The second thing I want to mention, I shouldn't have brought up Conor Stallions. I apologize.
Don't worry about it.
No.
Don't worry about it.
I would have loved to have one of those guys.
Well, on behalf
because I think I would have been that guy.
On behalf of Michigan fans everywhere, you don't want a Conor Stallions in Arkansas. Just pig suey without him, brother.
You know Cal? Have you met Cal?
I have met him. Yeah, I think you'd love him. Don't worry about it.
I signed up for a fantasy camp.
Okay.
In like 5 weeks, 30 and up with Cal.
And?
There's like 40 adult men that go and play basketball for 2 days.
And?
I don't know. I'm going to probably tear everything.
You're going to love him.
Yeah, but I'm going to go play.
You'll love him.
I don't even play basketball.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll find out how many minutes he gives you.
But I will go hard. Greatest sports achievement?
For me?
Personally, yeah, for you.
You mean that I've
watched your highlight of your sports life?
Meaning
that you've played,
that I've actually conducted,
that you have you accomplished
breaking 6 seconds in my 40-yard dash. You kidding me?
Even better.
Other than that was not getting picked last in gym in junior year of high school that one time. I'm just kidding. No, I mean I realized early on, Bobby, I couldn't hit the curve, couldn't make the jump shot, and I needed to talk a good game in order to get to a certain level. Was there a decision? Final question. A decision you made that, looking back, you're really glad you made it career-wise, but was really tough then, and it dictated a lot of where your career went. Meaning, oh God, yeah. I mean, I had many of those moments, man.
Crossroads type moments.
Crossroad moment. The first crossroad moment was working for the hometown newspaper, the Staten Island Advance, or the Advance as we would refer to it in Staten Island, and I was covering on the cops beat, and I was following ambulances because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I pulled off to the side of the road. I'm like, there's no other way to parse what I'm doing right now other than ambulance chasing. I need to do something about it. And I went back to grad school to Northwestern, Medill School of Journalism. That was a big moment for me. Getting my first job in Redding, California, and throwing myself deep into it was another job like that moment. Another crossroads was just saying, screw it. I'll just send my tape to a headhunter. Sent it to 3 different headhunters, and one of them showed my tape to ESPN. I got hired by ESPN through there. And another one was standing my ground with ESPN about what I wanted to do for them, which led to me getting handed a cardboard box and an opportunity with NFL Network and choosing them when I had a couple of options at the time, doing that. and then deciding that, I wanted to not just rest on what I was doing for NFL Network, start a podcast, which led to my current show every day. And just believing in that there's more that I can do than whatever I was supposedly considered by management to be too important and good at what I was doing, to try and keep on looking at everything else and try and be ahead of the curve, doing a podcast before many people did one, and go to streaming before anybody considered that as a viable option. Like those are all those moments.
Well, I would encourage everybody to stream your podcast. That's how I listen every day.
Thanks, brother.
I don't really do anything live anymore. Like, do you consume anything live? Is it except sports?
Sports is pretty much it.
Really?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, Saturday Night Live, I watch on clips. What else? I mean, yeah.
I mean, even like
that's about it.
Television shows, it's all on demand at this point.
Yeah.
I don't even think I have cable anymore.
Well, that's good because get Roku.
I do have Roku.
Rich Eisen show.
I do have Roku.
Attaboy.
Well, I'm a big fan. I really appreciate you
Thanks,
making
pal.
some time for us here.
Anytime.
Mike, anything?
What was the last good movie you saw?
Last good movie I saw in the theater?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. That I'd never seen before.
Yeah, a new one.
Huh. That's a good question. Last good movie. Man, I don't know. I liked American Fiction this year. I liked that a lot. I'm a big Jeffrey Wright fan. So I'll go with that one.
That's a good movie.
It was good.
What was that? Is that the
Where he writes that book kind of as a joke and then gets really famous from it?
And he'd been doing serious stuff before then and it hadn't worked out, but then when he
Yeah.
we watched that.
It's a good movie.
Kevin, anything real quick?
Yeah, I often say that you're like Jim Nance when you do the draft. Like,
Hello,
when I watch the
friend.
draft, and I'm like, oh, this is like Jim Nance during the Masters.
All right.
Where do you put that draft? Like working the draft weekend for you?
Oh, it's the hardest thing I do. No, without a doubt. Because it's long, it's live, the clock's moving. You got to not only know what's going on the clock, you got to know who's next. You got to know what's happening after that. You got to know what the narratives are going in, how they're playing out or not playing out when it's live in the first round. And then the second and third rounds, you got to treat that like it's the first round. And sometimes it can get a little slow there. And then the last day is just comedy, just like, let's just go. There's a lot of time. If you're watching between rounds 4 and 7, you need to be entertained as much as possible. So there's different vibes every night. But it is like when I'm done with it, it is demanding. It is the most mentally demanding thing that I do, but I love it.
Yeah.
Your car is here, I've just been told.
Fantastic.
So perfect timing.
Yeah, my flight's taking off in an hour and 15, and my TSA pre ran out.
Plenty of time. No problem
I feel
here in this
naked.
airport.
I feel naked.
Rich, thanks for coming by, man. Really
All right,
appreciate
thanks,
it.
bud.